What I do is I analyze human behavior. So I'm watching different gestures and decoding those meanings and reading your facial expressions of emotions and try to understand what you might be thinking or feeling. And then combining that with your words. What are you saying? What is decoding those words and coming up with, what does that actually mean behind those words? So it's kind of all encompassing.
Well, let's talk about how people can use that every day because, parents have kids, wives have husbands, husbands have wives, people have bosses, they have coworkers. And what I like to do is give people information where if they listen to us, they listen to you and me here, then they have an edge that other people don't have. Let's give them some tools and things that they can use in their everyday life. People always say that 7% of all communication is nonverbal. That's true at the hello level, but of course that goes down a lot as you get more data with words and everything. Now the words start to have more power, but still nonverbals are a huge part of communication, right?
Yes, they are, because reading nonverbal cues is nothing more than your emotions being revealed through your nonverbal movements. So whatever you're thinking and processing is going to be exhibited through your nonverbal cues, nonverbal movements.
People used to ask me when I was at Courtroom Sciences, can I really read a jury and what they're thinking or feeling at a particular time? And I was like, of course. I mean, it's like they're screaming from the jury box. If you have nothing to do but sit there all day and watch these people and how they respond when the plaintiff's lawyer gets up, how they respond when the defendant's lawyer gets up, when a certain witness is on the stand, and you really read them. First you get a baseline, then you see how they depart from that baseline from different people. It's astounding how much information they give you, and then you debrief them after the trial and you find out if you were right or wrong. And they truly are screaming at you non-verbally from the jury box. So it is true.
It is true. And the one thing, you mentioned everything, is I'm totally in sync with that, because I also am a trial consultant and I watch juries. And also what's important is in everyday life is that people are giving these cues off and then people are not picking them up and they're making decisions based on just what they're saying, and they're not picking up on those little nuances that gave you such valuable information. And the words, you find out that they're in opposition to what their body language was saying. So body language, in my opinion, is key to communication.
Why do you think some people just don't read the room? People that are maybe talking at dinner or going to a party or something, you see them talking and they just don't read the room. People are rolling their eyes or looking for the bathroom. It's like, how do I get away from this? And they don't get it. Seriously, how do people not read the room?
Yeah, in fact, I was having a conversation with a gentleman that was just in here. We're talking about, most people don't realize is that communication is a lot like volleying a ball back and forth, playing tennis, which is your favorite sport. So communication goes back and forth, and then all you're doing is listening to this boring person and not picking up that their eyes are rolling back in their head. And it's because they're thinking about something else. They're not tuned in. And you know what I find is that, especially with social media today, that they're not focused on face-to-face communication. They're down like this all the time. So
we're getting lazy at it, right?
Yes, getting very lazy at it.
If you could tell somebody how to read the room, it should be obvious if people are losing their audience. Are they that narcissistic?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And there's also people that are just attention seekers, right? So they're types of personalities that they feed off from all of that excitement. All the attention's got to be on me. Listen to me, because I am so self-important. I have so many important things to say, and then everybody should listen. And they're not noticing that when people are standing around in a circle, that their angles of their body are already faced towards the exit sign, or they want to go out the door, right?
Yeah.
And their faces have become very flat, or they've got that very phony, artificial smile that they're trying to be cordial and shaking their head, yet they're looking around the room just trying to figure out a way to exit out.
What do you think are the minimal encouragers that people should look for to tell whether somebody's really interested in what they're talking about?
If somebody is really interested in what they're talking about, is they're leaning forward and they have their head tilted, and they're bobbing their head 2 or 3 times like, yes, I hear you, and they're making really good direct eye contact. It's not a stare, but you find that when people are really interested, they're leaning in. They're tilting their head. They're in this active listening position. Their body language, their body language is tilted forward. So they're moving in towards your proxemics, into your space, because they want more. If they're leaning back or to the side, they're not. If they're leaning to the side, they may be analyzing. If they're leaning back, they're completely disinterested. And you might have noticed the same thing when you're in jury selection, right? People that are kind of leaning back and they're analyzing, they're just trying to figure out what everything's going on. If they're leaning back, you've completely lost them. So facial expressions, we know that movements and within their facial expression are universal compared to millions of other faces across the entire world. Now, when we're talking about body language, it's not multicultural, it's cultural. So that lean in could be someone that within that culture that's considered being their norm. In certain parts of the country and Asian countries, you know, that they're more close in proxemics. Others are further away. Looking at someone in the eye would offend a certain culture. Certain gestures also are very off-putting.
Let me see what you think about this. You've done this because you do jury work, but when I prepare witnesses, I always try to teach a witness this, and I don't have the research in my head anymore. Maybe you do, and if you do, maybe you'll send them to me. But I always quoted the research that as sad as it is, we tend to like people that like us. And that's common sense, right? We like people that like us. We don't like people that reject us. We like people that accept us, because our number one need in life is acceptance. Our number one fear is rejection. So we like people that like us. And we believe people we like. If we like somebody, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We want to believe them. So we believe people that we like, and we like people that like us. So that follows that we believe people that like us. Now that means, okay, hang on, there's another dot to this. That means if we're a good audience, we're going to be believed.
What happens is that we're sending messages. So there's a sending and receiving of messages going back and forth. And people, even the untrained person, is trying to decode what you're actually saying through your nonverbals. And they're also, what they're doing is they're watching those nonverbals, and they're also connecting it to someone that they might remember that looked like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
It is. And so they start to project, like, that woman's voice reminds me of my ex-wife. I don't like her. And they automatically taint them. It's not likable. But likability is really important, as you know, like even with attorneys. I mean, attorneys can shift how jurors feel about their client just based on their own presentation of themselves, their facial expressions, how they look at the jury, their tone that they use, their facial expressions, their grimaces. All of that plays into how people perceive you. And you're right. People are going to judge you from the minute they set eyes on you, and it's going to be very hard for them to be able to walk away from that and think differently. You have to prove it to them that you're different. And when I'm training people in my courses, is that even with mediators and attorneys, and say your outcome of that verdict is a direct reflection of how well you communicate with other people. Mm-hmm. So if you've got this grimace look on you, even that concentration can look like meanness or someone that's angry, and it could be concentration. People might misread that because the average person doesn't know how to actually decode body language accurately. They're just labeling those gestures to something they're familiar with. For example, one of the things I ask people is, like, at the very beginning of my training classes, is how many of you feel like you're really good at, like, reading a liar or reading people? And they'll raise their, oh, I'm really good. I said, well, the research has found that the reason why you're able to pick up those clues is because you're a pretty good liar yourself. Because you can pick up on things that you've actually used in the past, and that's why you can see it in other people and then recognize it.
Right. If we're telling people how to connect and bond, you said eye contact, and we're not talking about the 100-yard stare. We're talking about...
Right, the creepy one.
Yeah. You're talking about relaxed but consistent eye contact.
Right.
Leaning in, nodding along and giving the minimal encouragers. You become a good audience.
Yes.
And that makes you bond. that helps people feel comfortable with you.
It does.
They feel acceptance, so they're going to
Yes.
like you. And what I'm saying is, if they like you, they're going to believe you.
That is absolutely true. They will believe you because people trust people that they like. That's just the natural reaction. When you think about in sales, and they mentioned the person you bought the car from, they'll say, hey, go down there and go see my buddy. He's really a great guy. I really like him. Well, what they're really saying is that he gave me a good deal, but that connection that I had with them makes me feel like I want to trust them.
Yeah.
There's also danger in that, though, too, from the opposite end, because people that are perpetrators that really hone in on people to take advantage of them bank on that. So they know that those charming techniques, those rapport building skills that they've learned in classes that they come to, like myself, my classes that they come to, that I teach, that by using those techniques that I've trained, they can actually use it in a negative way too.
Yeah, because I've always said, I think you can trust people, or at least my formula is, I trust people as much as I trust myself to be able to deal with whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be perfect. If I trust myself enough to deal with your flaws and fallacies, then I can trust you. If I'm so fragile that you have to be perfect, then I can't trust you very much. But if I trust myself to, like, you don't have to be perfect, you make a mistake, you say something that maybe hurts my feelings, or you make a misstatement or whatever. If I trust myself enough to be resilient, to come back from that, to filter out something that's said wrong or even misrepresented, then I don't have to go through life with sweaty palms.
Yeah.
If I trust myself to be discerning enough, then I don't have to go through life scared. You got to trust yourself first, then you don't have to be so worried about what somebody else does.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, even, I think about that's important for even our kids to know, right? Our teenagers to be able to say, hey, I want to trust in themselves and not try to become, we talked about this earlier today in conversation, is that oftentimes what people do, even in business, they act out what they think that their boss may want them to be like. So become more assertive, be more powerful, be more commanding, and then they get off of their own natural gifts, right?
Yeah.
They get outside of their own gifts and talents, and they now become another person's identity. So you have to trust who you are, embrace who you are, embrace your own natural gifts, and I hate the word so much as authentic, but just be okay with who you are and accept it. And when you get to that place, then your nonverbals will fall in place. If you're feeling confident within yourself, your nonverbals will be confident. Yeah. If you're feeling shy and introverted, your nonverbals will look shy and introverted. So it's all here first, and psychologically, what you think and feel is going to be projected outside.
Yeah, I always talked about it as being congruent. If all your nonverbals are congruent with what you're saying, then it's just smooth. People read you right. They just seem like, she just seems real to me. Because everything she says just clicks with everything she seems to be. I mean, it just all clicks.
Yes.
The way she presents, everything just seems to go. And I think if you're around somebody that's not congruent, it's just like music that's offbeat. It just doesn't hit your ear right.
Exactly. And things are not fitting right. When you're around somebody going, it's just, something's not fitting. And that's really should be looked at anything from across the board. Things that don't fit together, well, if there's a reason for it. If there's discord or disconnect, there's because there is a disconnect.